3:52 a.m. Strait of Hormuz, 21 nautical miles from the Iranian coastline. 14 Iranian IRGC fast attack boats just cleared Bandar Abbas harbor at high speed, bearing directly toward USS Bataan, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship transiting the strait with 2,200 Marines aboard. The helicopter detachment was off the deck in 8 minutes. And the world's most critical maritime choke point was seconds from becoming a combat zone. Welcome to Warfare Signal. Tonight we're walking through the night. The Strait of Hormuz nearly shut down. Not with missiles, not with submarines, but with 14 small boats moving fast in the dark. And why that specific threat, low, fast, swarming, is one of the most difficult problems the US Navy faces in that body of water. Because speed matters more than size in the strait, and Iran has spent 30 years figuring that out. To understand why 14 small boats posed a serious threat to a ship that displaces 40,500 tons, you need to understand the geometry of the Strait of Hormuz. The navigable channel through the strait at its narrowest point is approximately 2 miles wide, divided into a 2-mile inbound lane and a 2-mile outbound lane, separated by a 2-mile median zone. Total navigable width for military transit, less than 6 miles. On either side, Iranian territorial waters to the north, Omani waters to the south. A Wasp-class amphibious assault ship transiting that channel is not a nimble vessel. Length, 844 feet. Beam, 106 feet. Draft when loaded, 26 feet. Maximum speed, approximately 22 knots. At that speed, it takes time to turn. It takes more time to stop. Fast attack boats change the calculation entirely. The Mark 13 fast attack craft, Iran's primary IRGC naval swarming platform, is roughly 40 feet in length, powered by twin outboard motors capable of driving it to speeds exceeding 45 knots. It carries a crew of 4 to 6. Standard loadout, a 23mm autocannon or heavy machine gun mount, rocket-propelled grenades, and in many configurations, a rack of unguided rockets. Some variants carry recoilless rifles or anti-tank guided missiles adapted for maritime use. The IRGC has operated these craft in the Gulf for decades. They train in swarm tactics, simultaneous convergence from multiple vectors, designed to overwhelm a single point of defense, split the attention of CIWS systems, and create gaps through which a suicide boat carrying explosives can close to lethal range. They've studied USS Cole. They know what a shaped charge does to a hull at close range. On the night in question, USS Bataan had been transiting the strait under standard escort. 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers on the flanks, positioned to provide anti-air and anti-surface cover. The formation had entered the strait from the south at 2300 hours the previous evening, and was approximately 2/3 through the transit when the contact report came in. At 3:44 a.m., CENTCOM's maritime intelligence picture flagged unusual activity in Bandar Abbas harbor. Boat movements, engine signatures on the acoustic sensors, multiple contacts. The watch officer on Bataan's bridge was notified at 3:47 a.m. The initial assessment classified it as possible exercise activity. Iranian fast boat sorties from Bandar Abbas were not unusual. The IRGC conducted them regularly. Probe and withdraw, harassment maneuvers, gathering response time data. More often than not, the boats would close to a certain distance, conduct a series of high-speed passes, and return to port. That assessment held for approximately 6 minutes. At 3:53 a.m., the pattern changed. The boats were not fanned into their standard harassment formation. They were organizing. 3 distinct groups, a lead element of 4 boats, 2 flanking elements of 5 boats each, spreading across a wide front and accelerating directly toward the transit lane. Range to lead element, 11 nautical miles. At 45 knots, that was approximately 14 minutes. Where are our helicopters? USS Bataan's flight deck carried a detachment from Marine Medium Tiltrotor Squadron 163, 6 MV-22 Ospreys, and 4 AH-1Z Viper attack helicopters. The Vipers were the relevant asset. Armed with a 20mm 3-barrel cannon, a GM-114 Hellfire missiles, and 2.75-inch Hydra 70 unguided rockets, the AH-1Z is one of the most capable attack helicopters in the American inventory. Its standoff engagement range, engaging surface targets from beyond the range of shoulder-fired missiles, exceeded 2 nautical miles. The first 2 Vipers were lifting off at 4 a.m., 8 minutes after the threat was classified. Now, 14 boats, 4 minutes, 2 helicopter pilots making their first targeting decisions of the night in the dark over the Strait of Hormuz. The scene on the bridge of USS Bataan at 4:01 a.m. was not calm. The commanding officer had 2 destroyer escorts positioned on the flanks, but the destroyer formation had been configured for the wide ocean transit, not for a narrow channel swarm scenario. Repositioning the destroyers into the strait's tight geometry to place them between Bataan and the incoming boats would take time the formation didn't have. The rules of engagement permitted warning actions, warning shots, radio challenges on maritime frequencies, deployment of non-lethal deterrents. The IRGC boats were not responding to radio challenges. That had been established at 3:59 a.m. when Bataan's bridge team broadcast on Channel 16 3 times without acknowledgement. The lead element was now 7 nautical miles out, closing at 45 knots. Time to engagement range, approximately 9 minutes. The commanding officer had a decision. The Viper crews were now on station, circling overhead, watching the boat formation on their sensors, weapons hot, waiting for the order. 3 options were on the table. Option A, fire warning shots across the bow of the lead element. Cannon fire into the water ahead of the boats. Clear, visible, unambiguous. Risk. Boats don't stop, and the formation continues closing. Option C, conduct a low-altitude, high-speed gun run past the lead element without firing. A show of force, demonstrating that the helicopters were armed and positioned to engage. What would you order? Comment A, B, or C below, because the commanding officer was choosing right now. He chose option A, warning shot. At 4:04 a.m., the lead Viper broke from its orbit pattern and descended toward the lead Iranian boat element, positioning approximately half a mile to the north of the lead craft's projected course. The 20mm cannon fired a short burst into the water. 2 seconds, approximately 40 rounds. Tracers visible in the darkness. The impact points raising a visible line of spray across the boat's projected heading. The lead element didn't stop. 2 of the 4 lead boats slowed momentarily. The crews could see the helicopter, could see the tracers, but the boat didn't reverse course. They adjusted, spreading wider, pushing further apart, attempting to widen the targeting problem. The flanking elements kept moving. At 4:06 a.m., the second Viper descended and conducted a direct gun run. Not a warning, not into the water, but a close pass directly over the lead boat formation at low altitude. Cannon tracked, but not firing. The noise, the rotor wash, the proximity at 80 knots. It was impossible to misread. 2 of the flanking boats turned. Range to Bataan, 4 nautical miles. But 8 boats were still coming. At 4:07 a.m., the 2 escort destroyers had begun repositioning at maximum speed, attempting to cut off the approach lane. But the math was difficult. The strait's geometry didn't give the destroyers room to interpose without risking collision in the confined channel. At 4, the lead boats were at 3 nautical miles. The Viper crews had the authorization. They had the targeting solution. They were circling. At 4:09 a.m., something changed. The lead element slowed. Not a full stop, but the aggressive closing speed dropped from 45 knots to approximately 12. The boats held distance, circling, not retreating, not advancing. The flanking elements followed the lead, slowing, spreading into a wide observation perimeter rather than a converging assault formation. For 11 minutes, the 2 formations held that geometry, Iranian boats circling at approximately 2.5 nautical miles, AH-1Z Vipers orbiting overhead, the two destroyers repositioned and positioned between the boats and Bataan. All radars active, all weapon systems tracking. At 4:20 a.m., the lead Iranian element turned. Within 7 minutes, all 14 boats were on a return bearing toward Bandar Abbas. By 4:41 a.m., they were back inside Iranian coastal waters. USS Bataan completed its strait transit at 6:17 a.m. No shots fired, no vessels damaged, no casualties on either side. On paper, a non-incident. The debrief that followed lasted 2 days. The post-incident assessment identified 3 problems that had made the engagement more dangerous than it needed to be. First, the initial classification. The Iranian sortie had been assessed as probable exercise activity for 6 minutes, from 0347 to 0353, before the approach geometry forced a reclassification. Those 6 minutes compressed the response window significantly. The Vipers launched at 4 a.m. A 6-minute earlier launch, keyed to the initial contact report, rather than the reclassified threat, would have placed armed helicopters on station before the boats reached 8 nautical miles. Second, the destroyer formation geometry. The wide ocean transit configuration had placed the escorts too far on the flanks to rapidly interpose in the strait's confined lane. Future Hormuz transits were revised to keep at least one escort positioned forward, ahead of the formation in the transit direction, rather than on the beam. Third, the radio silence. The IRGC boats had not responded to 3 maritime radio challenges before the warning shots were fired. Post-incident analysis suggested the boats had been operating under orders not to respond, maintaining radio discipline to preserve ambiguity about their intent as long as possible. That ambiguity was deliberate. It compressed the time available for non-lethal options. The 14 boats were not there to sink USS Bataan. Wargame projections and post-incident analysis consistently concluded that a direct attack against a Wasp-class with 2 destroyer escorts and helicopter air cover would have resulted in significant IRGC losses without achieving a disabling strike on the primary target. That wasn't the mission. The mission was measurement. How long did it take the Americans to reclassify the threat? 6 minutes. How long to launch the helicopters from the initial classification? 7 minutes. What options did they use, and in what sequence? Warning shots, then show of force, then authorization for lethal engagement. At what range did the authorization come through? 2 nautical miles. Iran filed all of that. According to intelligence assessments reviewed after the incident, the IRGC had conducted 6 similar approach operations against U.S. naval formations in the Gulf over an 18-month period. Each one had generated a slightly different American response pattern. Each one had added data to the picture. The Strait of Hormuz sees approximately 17 million barrels of oil pass through it every single day, roughly 20% of global petroleum consumption. The navigable channel is 6 miles wide. Every tanker, every LNG carrier, every container ship transiting the Gulf's export lanes passes through that geometry. The IRGC doesn't need to sink an American warship to create disruption. They need to make the calculation uncertain. They need shipping companies to start asking whether the premium is worth it. They need insurers to raise rates. They need the maritime traffic pattern to shift, even slightly, in response to Iranian presence. The 14 boats achieved that without firing a single shot. Commercial insurance war risk rates for Hormuz transits increased by 19% in the 30 days following the incident. 3 shipping companies filed temporary route diversion requests. No shots were fired. Here's what the night in the Strait revealed. The helicopter response worked. The AH-1Z Vipers were on station in under 10 minutes, armed, capable of lethal engagement at standoff range, and visible enough to force a tactical reassessment from the Iranian formation. The layered response, warning shots, show of force, lethal authorization, followed established escalation doctrine and produced the desired outcome. But the 6-minute classification delay came from treating the initial contact as routine. because Iranian fast boat activity in the Strait is routine. That's the problem. Routine is exactly the environment in which a serious threat can approach to an uncomfortable range before anyone upgrades the threat assessment. The next time 14 boats leave Bandar Abbas at 3 a.m., the response will be faster. And the time after that, the IRGC will have adjusted to the faster response. The Strait of Hormuz isn't a problem that gets solved. It's a problem that gets managed. Every transit, every time, against an adversary that has been studying the management playbook for 3 decades. One of the Viper pilots, interviewed as part of a naval aviation safety review, described what he saw from the cockpit that night. 14 contacts below me, dark water, no lights except their wakes and my targeting display. You know you have authorization. You know exactly where the line is, and you're watching them get closer to it in real time. He paused. They stopped 800 yards outside the line. I don't know if that was planned or luck. The intelligence community's assessment was that it was planned. Iran had their number, 2 nautical miles, and they stopped at 2.5. The battery of data they collected that night is sitting in a file somewhere in the IRGC Naval Command Structure. That's the war that doesn't make headlines. The one measured in nautical miles and response minutes and insurance premium percentages. It doesn't stop. It doesn't escalate to open conflict. It just continues. Until one night, the distance is 2 nautical miles exactly instead of 2.5. And then the Vipers won't have a choice. Stay vigilant. This is warfare signal.